Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Genevieve Newton, Scientific Director of Fringe. Thank you for joining me today to learn about Fringe Magnesium Mix. So in this webinar, we're going to break it up into two different parts. First, we're going to talk about magnesium, just cover the basics. What is it, where to get it, what are the different forms, its biological roles, what happens when you're deficient, what are the benefits of supplementation, and ultimately make the case that supplementation with a magnesium supplement is a really good idea to optimize health and wellness. Then we're going to get into looking at why Fringe Magnesium Mix is an ideal solution to that deficiency problem. We're going to talk about our active ingredients, our inactive ingredients, what are some of the noteworthy characteristics of our supplement. We're going to look at the existing market, talk about how we test thoroughly for safety, and then finish off with just a brief mention of how to use our products. All right, so let's get started. What is magnesium? Magnesium is a mineral. Specifically, it is a micronutrient, but a macro mineral. So micronutrients are nutrients that we need in very small amounts that we get from our diet or water. And then a macro mineral is a mineral that we need in larger amounts than some other trace minerals like selenium. So magnesium is something that we really, in terms of comparison with other minerals, we need a fair bit of it. It's one of the most abundant minerals in our bodies. It's one of the most abundant minerals on Earth. And human adults have about 25 grams of magnesium stored inside of them. We find most of this in our bones and our muscles. What's really interesting is that magnesium is not just essential for human life, it's essential for really all life. Plants love magnesium and they need magnesium to be healthy. And we're going to see how our plant story interacts with our human story in just a moment. So, what does magnesium do in the body? Well, this is our short list, a very short list. If you look at different sources, you're going to see statements that range from magnesium being involved in 300 reactions in the body, magnesium being involved in 600 reactions in the body. But in reality, magnesium is involved in over 800 reactions in the body, either as a cofactor or an activator. So it is involved in almost everything. It plays such an incredibly important role in human physiology. So we can break it down, though, into these different categories, including energy production. Every molecule of ATP has to be bound to magnesium in order to function. ATP, of course, is that energy currency of our cell. We need it to do everything. Muscle and nerve function. Magnesium regulates muscle contraction and nerve transmission. So it's involved in the functioning of our nervous system, our musculoskeletal system, and really just being human. Bone health, bone structure requires magnesium to regulate calcium balance and to support bone strength. Blood sugar and insulin regulation, all of that metabolic stuff. We can't metabolize our food properly without optimal magnesium. And then last but not least, DNA, RNA, and protein synthesis, kind of important. So you can see that if we have a deficiency of magnesium, we will have impairments in many of our physiological functions. So how much magnesium do we need? Well, this is a question that at this point in time is a little bit controversial. We have our official dietary recommendations. So these dietary references are set by the Institute of Medicine, and they tell us a minimum amount that we need to prevent deficiency. But what they don't tell us is what is our optimal intake. And that optimal intake is the amount that's a bit debatable, where there's more disagreement. So in terms of what we are recommended to prevent deficiency, it's broken down based on gender, age, and also pregnancy and lactation. So for most male adults, they require around 420 milligrams per day. For females, it's in the ballpark of 310 to 360, and that'll go up to 400 during pregnancy for younger women. Now, recently, however, there's been quite an argument that even these minimal levels to prevent deficiency are no longer accurate, that they need to be revised because our body sizes, our body weights on average have increased so much over the last few years. So the revised numbers are recommended to be about 600 or 60 to 235 milligrams higher. And then if we look at what the recommendations are for people who are talking about optimizing the health, optimizing our health status with magnesium intake, you'll see some experts out there that are recommending upwards of 1,000 milligrams a day. And already most people are falling short. Okay, so let's talk about where we get magnesium before we start getting into this deficiency situation. We do have many food sources of magnesium. They fall into a range of different categories. If you're somebody who's eating a healthy diet, a diverse diet, in theory, you should be getting enough magnesium. And here's some examples. Green leafy vegetables, cooked spinach, 150 milligrams per cup. Legumes, black beans, 120 milligrams per cup. Cashews, 75 milligrams per ounce. Pumpkin seeds, 150 milligrams per ounce. We've got whole grains that contain magnesium. Brown rice contains 80 milligrams per cup. Dairy, yogurt contains 50 milligrams per cup. Meat and fish contain some magnesium. It's in lower amounts, but it's there. Tuna should contain 40 milligrams per 3 ounces. So what's the problem? If you're eating a good diet, shouldn't you be getting enough magnesium? Well, unfortunately, that is no longer the case. So historically speaking, in a healthy ecosystem, our soil is full of magnesium. That soil gets taken up by the plants get eaten by animals, and magnesium flows through our food system in a healthy and optimal way. But over the last century, we've had such severe depletion of magnesium from our soil that soil magnesium studies have found decreases of up to 80% in the last 70 years. And in some cases, when we look at how this soil deficiency has translated into magnesium deficiency in the plants, it's been found that the worst case scenario is that that plant has 90% less magnesium than it did a century ago. So even if you're eating a healthy diet, even if you're eating plants and animal products that should contain magnesium, the reality is that you may very well still be deficient in this essential micronutrient. We have another situation. Water historically has also been a source of magnesium, in some cases up to 20%. So when we look at our water supply, it is filled with natural minerals. They're in a dissolved state, and calcium and magnesium are the two that are present in the highest amounts. So here's some examples. Groundwater in many parts of the US and Canada is naturally high in magnesium. For example, if you go to the store and you buy the sparkling water from Germany called Gerolsteiner, contains 108 milligrams of magnesium per liter. San Pellegrino has 58 milligrams per liter. The US groundwater in the Midwest has 20 to 50 milligrams per liter. Municipal hard water can have 50 to 40 milligrams per liter. Municipal soft water will have less than 10. So this water as a source of magnesium, along with food as a source of magnesium, historically has really allowed humans to meet their required needs. But we just talked about soil depletion, and now we have water depletion. So over the last century, again, with all the industrialization, we have contaminated our water to the point where we now have to go through extensive processing to remove contaminants. This contamination causes physical changes, it causes chemical changes. We see things like arsenic and cadmium and lead and chromium. These are all suspected carcinogens. And sources like the Environmental Working Group have described that tap water in the US can contain lead, arsenic, PFAS, as well as medical waste. So we don't have clean water. As a result, we have to clean it. We have to filter it. And in that filtration process, not only do we remove all of these harmful things, but we also remove the healthy things. So a reverse osmosis system is not going to distinguish between magnesium and lead. It's going to take them both out. So the end result of all of this water processing is that now, in addition to the soil depletion of magnesium, we also have our water depleted of magnesium. And so we have this scenario where our intake of this critical micronutrient is severely deficient. Other factors affecting magnesium status are really widespread. A lot of people experience these. So gut health, if you have gut dysbiosis, malabsorption, gut disorders, this affects our magnesium absorption. It decreases our magnesium absorption. And then stress. Cortisol increases urinary magnesium loss and depletes our bodies of this essential mineral. How many of us are dealing with excessive stress? Alcohol intake increases magnesium loss as well. Many medications cause urinary or GI loss of magnesium. If you sweat excessively, you'll lose magnesium. Pregnancy and breastfeeding, we have higher needs. Growth increases our magnesium needs. Chronic illness, anything that is causing increased turnover and repair of our tissues, increases our magnesium needs. And then genetic factors, so things like magnesium transporter gene polymorphisms. So not only do we have our potential issues with soil, food intake, water intake, we also have these other factors that need to be considered by an individual when you're trying to determine what's optimal for you in terms of this intake. So magnesium deficiency, and this is a quote, we're just going to keep this as simple as possible here, and let the words speak for themselves. So in a recent article published in the scientific journal Open Heart, it was stated that the evidence suggests that subclinical magnesium deficiency is rampant and is one of the leading causes of chronic diseases, including cardiovascular disease and early mortality. That means early death, and should be considered a public health crisis. So with this statement, what it's telling us is that the majority of people are in a scenario of experiencing magnesium deficiency to the point where it is significantly affecting their health, their well-being, and potentially even their longevity. So the consequences of magnesium deficiency, I have these divided here into two different categories. Remember that quote that I just read talked about subclinical. Subclinical means that it's below the threshold, or should say above the threshold, of showing clear clinical signs and symptoms. So most people are walking around with a deficiency that they don't even know they have because the symptoms are not strong enough or overt enough to warrant attention. That's in contrast to a frank magnesium deficiency. If you have a frank magnesium deficiency, you end up in the hospital. So frank magnesium deficiency is going to cause nausea, vomiting, fatigue, abnormal heart rhythm, convulsions, psychiatric disturbances. That's going to be a clinical deficiency. That's going to get noticed. These subclinical magnesium deficiencies cause things over the long term, including cardiovascular disease, metabolic disease, diabetes, migraines, osteoporosis, asthma, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, PMS, and dysmenorrhea. All of this is from the scientific literature. So in terms of the risks of a subclinical magnesium deficiency, what we can really say is that your long-term health is going to be affected by this, probably more than with any other nutrient deficiency that we have. So the solution to our deficiency, of course, is magnesium supplementation. And now we're going to switch gears and talk about why Fringe Magnesium Mix is an optimal solution for you to deal with this and optimize your health. So Fringe Magnesium Mix is a magnesium blend. We have 3 forms of magnesium in this mix. It's water soluble, so it dissolves in water. It's a powder. It's naturally sourced. The ingredients are clean, and it's part of Fringe's Essentials supplement line. Our ingredients are always characterized in all of our supplements by 5 different attributes. So the first one is our formulations are really simple. We don't have anything in our supplements that doesn't need to be there. Everything serves a purpose. We use clean and natural ingredients. So whenever possible, they're non-GMO, they're organic, and they're naturally sourced. We use effective doses. We don't believe in using too little, too much. We want to make sure that this is going to be effective for almost everybody. And so these doses are therapeutic and evidence-based. We're extremely transparent with our labeling. We don't include things that are in our products that are not disclosed on our labels. And we do extensive third-party testing with independent labs. Why we use a magnesium mix has to do with the fact that magnesium is a mineral in terms of what you find in a supplement. It's always complexed with something else. So it'll be complexed with, for example, an amino acid. It can be complexed with a fatty acid. It can be complexed with something else that creates some sort of physiological benefit. So by combining different forms of magnesium into a mix, you can not only get the benefits of the magnesium element itself, you can get some additional benefits. And so we very carefully thought about what the other aspects of health that we would like to support with these particular forms of magnesium that we've selected. So the 3 forms that we selected are magnesium bisglycinate, magnesium orotate, magnesium malate, for a total of 200 milligrams of elemental magnesium. So in addition to the elemental magnesium, we have some glycinate, we have some orotate, and we have some malate, each of which has a unique biological role. So magnesium bisglycinate or magnesium glycinate, those terms are often used interchangeably. This is also called a magnesium salt, just refers to the chemical composition. And glycine is an amino acid. So we combine the magnesium with glycine to make the magnesium glycinate. And the additional benefit that we get from this are effects on stress, anxiety, and sleep. Magnesium glycinate has really good bioavailability, and it's very easy on the GI tract. This is really important because magnesium supplements are well known to to have a laxative effect. In fact, some of them are used as laxatives. And so it's really important when you are taking something that is meant to support your health, that you don't have these unintended outcomes like GI distress. Magnesium orotate is also a magnesium salt. It's magnesium combined with orotic acid. You don't see magnesium orotate in very many supplements at all. It's a little bit more expensive, and it's also a little bit newer, but it has some really remarkable research showing that it supports cardiovascular health as well as the gut-brain axis. So it's a very unique and very effective form of magnesium to include in a supplement. It may even prevent against diabetes and Alzheimer's disease. Like the magnesium glycinate, great bioavailability, and it's easy on the GI tract as well. The last one we've included is magnesium malate. So magnesium combined with malic acid. That's a metabolism intermediate. This is really good for muscle tension and recovery, chronic pain, inflammation, and energy production. And again, like the other two forms, really great bioavailability and no adverse effects on our GI system. What is in our supplement as far as our inactive ingredients is really where this particular supplement gets set apart from the rest. We have two additional ingredients, organic agave inulin and thaumatin. So thaumatin is a protein-based sweetener. It's from an African fruit called katemfe. And it's non-caloric, so it doesn't contribute any calories, but it gives it a nice little bit of a sweet taste, and it's known to be extremely safe and not have any adverse effect on any measured physiological outcomes. Organic agave inulin is present to help us with dosing, but it has an additional benefit of being a prebiotic, so it helps to support the gut microbiome and help that microbiome to be healthy. But if you compare this inactive ingredient list to what else is on the market, you're not going to find any that don't contain significantly more inactive ingredients than we do. This is because of our commitment to simple formulations, transparency. We are only including things that need to be there. We don't include anything extra, and we make sure that everything that's there plays an important biological role. So if we compare this to the existing market, I've talked about those digestive issues. Many magnesium supplements are really hard on the GI system. They cause diarrhea. These include things like magnesium oxide, magnesium hydroxide, magnesium sulfate, magnesium citrate, and magnesium carbonate. You want to avoid those unless you're specifically looking for a laxative effect. There are meg absorption issues as well. If you look at these different forms of magnesium, some of them have bioavailability as low as 4%, whereas the ones that we're using are bioavailable at up to 80 to 90%. And by that, I mean that what you consume in the supplement that goes into your GI tract actually gets absorbed into the body and distributed throughout the body. So absorption issues need to be considered. If you're buying a supplement, you want to make sure that it's not just passing right through you. And you can be assured that magnesium malate, orotate, and glycinate are very, very highly bioavailable. I think for me, the part that's the most concerning about the existing market are the chemicals. And so that's where we have that inactive ingredient list. You know, every magnesium supplement is going to have some form of magnesium or plural forms of magnesium as the active ingredient. But these inactive ingredient lists can be 5, 10 ingredients long, and they can include things like silicon dioxide, titanium dioxide, stearic acid, polyethylene glycol, microcrystalline cellulose, artificial flavors, and artificial colors. And we see that as it just really is not being acceptable anymore. There isn't a need for most of these ingredients or really any of these ingredients. And I think what we've shown at Fringe is that you can create a clean supplement that doesn't include these, and it's time for these products to get basically clean up. So high quality magnesium supplements will still have issues that we would like to highlight. These are threefold. So they include natural flavors, citric acid, and stevia. So natural flavors are in fact the fourth most common ingredient on food labels. You see them absolutely everywhere. The food industry loves them and the supplement industry loves them. Why we don't love them is because they're misleading. So a natural flavor can actually include artificial and synthetic ingredients. It starts with a natural substrate, but by the time it goes through processing, there can be many things that have been added to it such that your final product is very different than your starting product. And this does not have to be disclosed on a label. So if it says natural flavors, you think, well, there's one ingredient there when in fact there could be 5. These could be things like silicon dioxide. They could have many different components that you're not aware that you're consuming that perhaps you don't want to consume. So another couple of examples here would be propylene glycol and polysorbate 80. That can end up in the final product and not be disclosed on the label. Citric acid is extremely controversial. Citric acid is also very, very widely used in supplements, dietary supplements. It's a nice powder. It has a nice taste to it. Where the concern comes is that it is produced industrially via fermentation of a type of black mold. And so the concern is with contamination. A high quality product should confirm on the back end that there's no mold contamination. But if you are consuming a product with citric acid, you want to make sure that the company that you're buying from provides you with that certificate of analysis that confirms that. There are also some anecdotal reports that people with mold sensitivities or histamine intolerance, mast cell activation syndrome, and autoimmune diseases may have some reactions, adverse reactions to citric acid. And then stevia. Everybody's heard of stevia. Stevia is a non-nutritive, plant-based supplement sweetener, very widely used in clean label products. But there is a small yet emerging amount of research that suggests that the gut microbiome in some people may be adversely affected by stevia intake. We don't see the same research for thaumatin, which is why we selected, rather than using stevia as a sweetener, we chose to use one that does not have this potentially negative effect. So in terms of what we have in our products, we've talked about that, but I do want to highlight what are not in our products. So again, no citric acid, no sugar, no stevia, no gluten, no GMOs, no dairy, soy, or protein, and no natural flavors. We're committed to making all of our products without any of these very, very commonly used ingredients. We do extensive safety testing. These include for molds and mycotoxins. We test for pesticides, 59 of them in total, and we also do extensive testing for heavy metals, including arsenic, cadmium, mercury, and lead. All of our testing is done by a third-party independent lab, so it's not biased by in-house testing. All you have to do with any of our products, scan the QR code and it'll bring you to the certificate of analysis, which will bring you to the sheet that shows and confirms the safety of the particular batch of supplement that you're consuming. There are many companies that are doing similar safety testing, but sometimes they're not doing testing on every single batch. And that's something that you want to always make sure of. How much should we take? As we talked about before, the amount of magnesium that people need is a little unclear at this point in terms of what's optimal for health. So for most adults, we suggest starting with a scoop a day, but that can be increased. It can be increased to 2 if needed. And if you're working under the guidance of a healthcare provider who recommends even more, that's certainly safe as well. It can be taken any time of day, but if you take it 30 to 60 minutes before bed, it may help with sleep. Our product is also really safe for kids. All you need to do is just decrease the dose according to their age. So 1/4 of a scoop for ages 1 to 3, 1/2 a scoop for ages 4 to 8, 3/4 of a scoop for ages 9 to 13, and then a full scoop for ages 14 plus. If you have any questions about any of our supplements, please feel free to reach out to customer service. We love to hear from you. You can reach us at hi@fringeheals.com or visit our website to learn more about all of our products. We write extensively about things in our blogs and research area, and we love to support our consumers with education. Thanks for your attention today.